Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. We're continuing, inshallah, The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. It's like the feminist Bible in fiction, to be quite honest with you. It really is presented in so many talking points of the feminists. I mean, it's remarkable how many times a feminist, when I say something about large families, value of fertility, they say, "What do you think this is, The Handmaid's Tale?" It's shocking. So it's important for us Muslims to have a refutation of it, explanation from it, pick it apart, examine the meat and bones of it all, because a lot of people don't really take the time to analyze what it's all about, what it's trying to subliminally tell you, takes a dig at the Christians and whatnot. The author is a pro-J author. She would never write this kind of book going at the Jays or whatnot, and she's anti-Islam. So you can see the bias there as well. So it's important for us to understand what's her goal, okay? Now, remember, we were dealing with how Moria escaped, tied up one of the aunts, Aunt Elizabeth, and put her by the water heater, and Aunt Lydia is talking to Janine, trying to tell Janine to be a little spy, and to, give her information and to keep her eyes and ears open. So that's where we are, okay? Remember, Moria dressed up as an aunt and marched out of the Red Center. Let's begin, Bismillah. The fact that she told Dolores all about this encounter in Aunt Lydia's office meant nothing. It didn't mean she wouldn't testify against us, any of us, if she had the occasion. We knew that by this time we were treating her in the way people used to treat those with no legs who sold pencils on street corners. We avoided her when we could. We were charitable to her when it couldn't be helped. She was a danger to us. We knew that. So here you can see there's a lot of secrecy, right? A lot of these women want to escape, but they can't, but they also chose to be there, but they also lost the war. So some of them, they're not true believers. Is Janine a true believer? Who knows, alright? Did she get fully conditioned? Maybe. So that's the context, okay? The context is she one of them or not, but they feel that she's a spy for Aunt Lydia. Dolores probably patted her on the back and said she was a good sport to tell us. Where did this exchange take place? In the gymnasium, when we were getting ready for bed. Dolores had the bed next to Janine's. The story passed among us at night, in the semi-darkness, under our breath from bed to bed. Moria was out there somewhere. She was at large, or dead. What would she do? The thought of what she would do expanded till it filled the room. At any moment there might be a shattering explosion. The glass of the windows would fall inward. The doors would swing open. Moria had power now. She had been set loose. She'd set herself loose. She was now a loose woman. Now there's a play on words here. Set loose. So she's going to cause havoc. She's going to hurt the aunts. She has power now because she's a sort of heroic image, icon in those who don't like Gilead. She set herself loose, meaning that she didn't have to bribe anybody or do something like that, but she found how to get out based on her own wit. Now, when a loose woman, that's a slang also for a whore, which Moria is a whore. And she's so loose that she chooses to be in the brothel. And she chose to get sterilized and let every commander have a turn at her perpetually until she's too old. So she's a nasty, nasty woman. I think we found this frightening. Moria was like an elevator with open sides. She made us dizzy. Already, we were losing the taste for freedom. Already, we were finding these walls secure. In the upper reaches of the atmosphere, you'd come apart. You'd vaporize. There would be no pressure holding you together. So they're talking about Stockholm Syndrome, a little bit right there. But also, I would just talk about adaptability. You can adapt to quite a lot and get accustomed to certain things, get conditioned. Some inmates report that they felt more comfortable after a while in prison than out being free. And some men have been with some terrible wives and they're like, you know what? They just get comfortable and complacent. Not realizing that if they left their wretched wife, life would be easier. And there are also women who, they say, you know, I'm so used to being with this person that I might as well just stay, and it's too hard to go out and find something else, so why even bother? I can't be bothered. Nevertheless, Moria was our fantasy. We hugged her to us. She was with us in secret, a giggle. She was lava beneath the crust of daily life. In the light of Moria, the aunts were less fearsome and more absurd. See, so this highlights a lot about hero psychology as well. Like, some people can appear, pardon me, big and bad. All it takes is someone to show a weakness, and then part of that image is taken aback. But the aunts are still fearsome, because they can send you off to the colonies for understanding. They got a cow prod, and they can make your life harder or better. Absurd? I don't think they're absurd. Just because some of them are older ladies doesn't make them somebody who can't inconvenience your life greatly. You know, that's what I'd argue. Their power had a flaw to it, as does everyone's. They could be shanghaied in toilets, and so could the handmaids, quite honestly. I mean, it's not, Moria was younger. She chose an older Aunt Elizabeth. I mean, it's about respecting your elders in a way. Are you willing to hurt an old lady in there you're young? I would never feel comfortable with that. I would never strike a grandma. If I was a handmaid, I would probably learn how to get along with the aunts. I'm not that kind of person who wants to do a armbar chokehold on a granny. The audacity was what we liked. Yeah, the audacious nature of Moria. So the aunts were right about Moria the whole time. That's what's even more absurd, is that Moria proved them right. So their judgment is sound. We expected her to be dragged in at any minute, as she had been before. We could not imagine what they might do to her this time. I mean, it's life or death in that situation for sure. It would be very bad, whatever it was. But nothing happened. Moria didn't reappear. She hasn't yet. Now we're in part 23. This is a reconstruction. All of it is a reconstruction. It's a reconstruction now in my head as I lie flat on my single bed, rehearsing what I should or shouldn't have said, what I should or shouldn't have done, how I should have played it, if I ever get out of here. Let's stop there. I intend to get out of here. It can't last forever. Others have thought such things in bad times before this, and they were always right. And they did get out one way or another, and it didn't last forever. Although for them it may have lasted all forever they had. So here we see you know, they have a lot of time. She's very descriptive in what they think about, you know. And it's important for us to understand that the handmaids, they think about nothing but escape. They don't really have a lot of fun, you know. Now, she goes on, and the commander that she's living, like, remember the household, the Marthas, the wife, the commander, he wants to kiss her. And she does, you know, like a peck. It's really strange. And then it goes on further. We'll go here. Okay, just the brain going through its back files. And as I was wakened by Cora with the dinner tray, and time came, was back on track. It a good baby? It a good baby, says Cora as she's setting down the tray. She must know already. They have a kind of word-of-mouth telegraph from household to household. News gets around, but it gives her pleasure to hear about it, as if my words will make it more real. It's fine, I say, a keeper, a girl. Cora smiles at me, a smile that includes. So a smile that includes, see that? Cora is friendly to the handmaid, whereas Rita doesn't trust the handmaid, as she shouldn't be. You can get mad at some of these characters, but it's important to see through their lens. But Cora likes children. You can see that she wants to have a little kid to cook for. She's always excited to talk about babies, which is wholesome. And she doesn't really try to isolate our handmaid. These are the moments that must make what she's doing seem worthwhile to her. That's good, she says. Her voice is almost wistful, and I think, of course, she would have liked to have been there. It's like a party she couldn't go to. yeah, you can see that as well. Maybe we have one soon, she says shyly, but we, she means me. It's up to me to repay the team. Justify my food and keep, like a queen aunt with eggs. Rita may disapprove of me, but Cora does not. Instead, she depends on me. She hopes I am the vehicle of her hope. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with liking children, liking pregnancy, liking fertility, wanting more children in the world. Okay? And the queen aunt sits there and produces the ant army. And the aunt that has the most ants, her army is able to protect as well. If you watch some videos of how brutal ants are to each other when they invade the other one, it's not pretty. They go straight into like that nursery where all the little eggs are and like just pull them out, and the queen gets pulled apart. It's pretty intense, What am I, a baby machine? And meanwhile, you look at the ant. Sorry, I keep saying aunt. The ant. And you think about how many ants eat food we drop, and they're actually overwhelmingly scary in a way, especially the ones that bite. They go on your baby. It's not fun. They get all over you, bite you. Ants are pretty crazy. She hopes, and I am the vehicle of her hope. So there's nothing wrong with being the vessel for human life, the portal where souls come into this realm. But she uses the word vehicle because the vehicle is more hard of a shell. It's to be used and ridden. So the language she puts in her book is symbolic, and there's a reason for it. Her hope is of the simplest kind. She wants a birthday here, with guests and food and presents. She wants a little child to spoil in the kitchen, to iron clothes for, to slip cookies into when no one's watching. I am to provide these joys for her. I would rather have the disapproval. I feel more worthy of it. And see, you can see the happiness, the celebration when babies are born in Glee. Now, surrogacy, I think, is evil. But this is like a weirder form of, not weirder, but it's like a type of surrogacy in a weird way. Because the mother is the handmaid and the fertilizer is the commander. And the commander, if he has a wife who can't have kids, and he qualifies for a handmaid, he gets one. So you could say a slave girl, but the handmaids, they don't do any physical labor. That's left to the Marthas. They have their role and that's it. And they celebrate each child because remember, we're living in a dystopia where too many children are being born with birth defects and not making it. Okay? And they have decided, we have to keep the human race going. So we're going to institute a group of women that will help the birth rate get up, and it'll get better as it goes along. But the first generations of handmaids are going to have a more difficult time. The dinner is beef stew. I have some trouble finishing it because halfway through it, I remember what the day has erased right out of my head. It's true what they say. It's a trance state, giving birth or being there. You lose track of the rest of your life. You focus only on that one instant, but now it comes back to me and I know I'm not prepared. The clock in the hall downstairs strikes 9. Those old-fashioned clocks are actually pretty cool. Like ding, ding, ding. I mean, I wouldn't have one because noises like that wake you up, and I have insomnia, so I can't be having that stuff. But they add in text, in imagery, as like we're reading, a sort of ominous stillness. You know, imagine that old father clock, tick, 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 ding, ding. Like, you know, there's something about that. It's very Edgar Allan Poe-ish in a way. I press my hands against the sides of my thighs. Breathe in, set out the long hall, and softly down the stairs. Serena Joy may still be at the house where the birth took place. That's lucky. He couldn't have foreseen it. On these days, the wives hang around for hours, helping to open the presents, gossiping, getting drunk. So, the thing is that Christians, they can drink alcohol. Now, you're not supposed to be drunkardly, but it's not hard to understand that in a Christian dystopian book as this, because remember she's made everyone Christian, that there would be wives drinking. But you see how the wives are able to be social, right? The handmaidens are not. They're spied upon, heavily controlled, and you know, the aunts try to prevent them from gossiping, and you're not really allowed to give a whole bunch of presents to the handmaids, and you're supposed to deprive them a little bit so they don't become entitled and lazy. You know, she's contrasting this for us, as she's done quite well throughout the book. Ask yourself, who would you want to be? I'd rather be a wife. But see, if you're a jealous woman who hates polygamy, you couldn't be a wife. And if you were one, you'd probably be very mean to the handmaid. You see? So, would you want to be, like, think about the feminists who are like, I won't cook, I won't clean, and I want monogamy. Okay, and some of them hate having kids. Where are you going to be in this society? Okay? You're going to cook and clean as a Martha. You can be a celibate aunt who can't have kids and can't get married. Or you can be a handmaid who goes from home to home, birthing children for the commander's family. Or a wife who gets to have coffee, buffets, and luxuries, but you have to share your husband. You see? There's all these little pockets. You know, but at the same time, I wouldn't mind being an aunt either. But I couldn't be a handmaid because I love children. I would cry. I wouldn't be able to breastfeed them for too long, and I would lose them. I just love children too much. I love being a mom too much. I couldn't stand giving a child away. But as we know, there's lots of people who give their kids up for adoption, or they get abortions. So women who get abortions probably wouldn't mind being a handmaiden because they don't want to raise kids. So, and they have a wicked heart. So I wouldn't be surprised that they wouldn't want to be a parent. Something has to be done to dispel their envy. So here she just pointed out that in order for the wives not to be jealous of the handmaids, they have to be able to have these certain privileges so that they can look down on the other women. Again, highlighting that I've said before that women's jealousy, if it ruled the world, it would be despotic. The fact of how evil women are when they're jealous isn't talked about enough. I follow the downstairs corridor back, past the door that leads into the kitchen, along to the next door, his. I stand outside it, feeling like a child who's been summoned at school to the principal's office. What have I done wrong? My presence here is illegal. It's forbidden for us to be alone with the commanders. We are breeding for breeding purposes. We aren't concubines, geisha girls, courtesans. On the contrary, everything's possible has been done to remove us from that category. So here, this is where you see the kinkiness of the author come in. Forbidden. Remember, our handmaiden was a skank who slept with a married man. And she used to hear the wife call crying on the guy's phone. Luke's phone. So she's totally fine with banging a married dude. Alright? She likes being naughty. She likes breaking the rules. She likes how Moria is a skanky pervert who's blunt and a bit grotesque and masculine, tomboyish, I'd argue. And she likes that. So the author here has made it to where we see even more of the personality of the character here, the society's purpose of the handmaids, and concubines, or there's an allure around them. Geisha girls of the Chinese, you know, they're concubines as well. You know, should they want to make it to where it's not some lustful, blissful harem, but rather a factorized, so like a factory farming element. It's mechanical, it's dry, robotic, no passion, no intensity, just for the procreation. So, cutting it down to the very veins of what it's meant to be. There is supposed to be nothing entertaining about us. So they also can't be fully bare during the ceremony, and the wife has to hold the handmaiden's arms, and the man has to be fully dressed. He can only unzip. This is also very kinky that the author has put in here. You know, it's a power dynamic, having to be held down by a powerful man. You'll be surprised. These feminists say they hate men, but in their fantasies that they write about men, there's that power dynamic. There's a huge hypocrisy in these women. They claim to want this soft, charming, feminized male, but every book they write, you know, they got some type of scene like this where it's like, this is forbidden. There's a power dynamic. A man in uniform. Oh, save me. You know, it's ridiculous. Okay, nothing entertaining about us. No room is to be permitted for the flowering of secret lusts. No special favors are to be waddled. So, see, no favors. Remember how the wives have those privileges of giving gifts and gossiping, getting drunk, all that jazz? Oh, there's a squirrel. You don't get to have that as a handmaid, okay? There are to be no toeholds for love. We are two-legged wombs, that's all, sacred vessels, ambulatory chalices. So see how there's nothing wrong with being a sacred vessel. Okay? Two-legged wombs. Now, if you go on my blog, I posted recently, there's an image of a cow, like, you know, when you go into the medical charts and like you see the medical charts on your OBGYN's office, right? Your gynecologist. There's like your cervix and the ovaries. So they took a cow and they put it over that with the ears. So I'm not your breeding stock. Okay? Now, dairy cows are repeatedly impregnated so we can get our cheese and all the good stuff we love. When they can't birth anymore, they're sent off to the slaughter factory. That's just the way it is, because the sheer volume of products that require dairy and the health benefits of dairy, you know, you can buy from humane certified places. You don't have to be factory farm products. You know, grass-fed, pasture-raised, humane certified. You just gotta be willing to pay $2 more. The cows are treated better, but comparing the handmaids to dairy cows in the Handmaid's Tale art, the feminist art, is clever, but it also reduces how they see pregnancy, how they see their access to abortion. You know, when a woman wants the baby, we say congratulations on your pregnancy. We don't say congratulations on your clump of cells, right? So feminists have this language of, when you don't want the baby, you dehumanize it, call it a parasite and a clump of cells. When you do want it, you have a gender reveal party, a baby shower, then you use positive language. So feminists are not consistent with how they view human life. And if the woman wants the baby, she's a sacred, happy vessel. But if she's a handmaid, it's not special at all. Even though in Gilead, they do think that the babies are special. But notice here, it's the handmaidens who blame the aunts for how the pregnancies are framed. It just doesn't make sense to me at all. But the author here is clearly a foaming at the mouth feminist who glorifies abortion, rather have women abort. She also promoted sterilization here by having some of the rabid feminists who were protesting against Gilead and the takeover. They would sterilize themselves, and then has Aunt Lydia say, like, how could they? So, in the Bible, be fruitful and multiply is mocked here because she rather have sterility. Okay? It's a very twisted book, but I'm hoping that the way we dissect it, you can see what she's up to. So why does he want to see me at night alone? If I'm caught, it's to Serena's tender mercies I'll be delivered. He isn't supposed to meddle in such household discipline. That's women's business. After that, reclassification, I could become an unwoman. So here again, I mentioned to you several times some of the privileges that the wives get. And the wife, because she's can be prone to jealousy, if she catches her husband enjoying the handmaid, and there's a lust, there's love, there's passion, kindness, she will have her sent to the colonies. And in the colonies there's a bunch of pollution. So if you look at how Islam, we should treat our sister wives well, because they have they're Muslims, and they have rights. Okay? You should not be ruled by jealousy. You have to get over that. So look at this feminist sisterhood. It's not real. If it was real, the wives wouldn't punish the handmaids, would they? They'd feel mercy. Here's a slice of cake. You want a little cup of coffee. They would try to get along. But the wives, who are women, they have a deep hatred for the handmaids because they can't get over their jealousy. They want the child, but they hate the woman who's going to give them the child. That's the bizarreness. And if you think about, if someone was going to grow you a baby, you'd want to treat them very well and have them feel comfortable, loved, cared for, and whatnot. But not the wives. Not the wives, and not in Gilead. But to refuse to see him could be worse. There's no doubt about who holds the real power. So here you see the contrast of, do you fear the wife or the commander? So you're stuck. What do you do? They end up, she knocks on the door, and they play a game. I think it was called Scrabble. They play a game for a little while. He doesn't do anything really bad to her. But she mentions how she goes in there and she feels terrified. She wants to cry. She feels out of place. Stuff like that. And then she mentions, he must have noticed this because he looks at me puzzled, gives a little frown I choose to interpret as concern, though it may merely be irritation. Here, he says, you can sit down. He pulls a chair out for me, sets it in front of his desk, then he goes around behind the desk and sits down slowly, and it seems to me elaborately. What this act tells me is that he hasn't brought me here to touch me in any way against my will. He smiles. The smile is not sinister or predatory. It's merely a smile. A formal kind of smile. Friendly, but a little distant, as if I'm a kitten in a window. One he's looking at, but doesn't intend to buy. I sit up straight in the chair, my hands folded on my lap, feel as if my feet in their flat red shoes aren't quite touching the floor. But of course they are. And then he just talks to her like, must feel strange. She's like, I don't feel really well. And so she mentions that there's this bargaining exchange session, like he's asking you to do something bad, breaking the rules. Now you might be able to ask a favor. So they play Scrabble together. And she starts kind of wanting to laugh inside, fall off her chair in a way, because she feels like this is a game for old men that people play in retirement villas. And she mentions how her mom had a set like that. Okay? But that game apparently is forbidden. It's considered dangerous and indecent, and you can't play it. So The fact that Scrabble can't be played is, I think, because women aren't allowed to read and write. And certain, like, the aunts can read and write, but the handmaids are not given, like, writing utensils and stuff, which is really strange. Kind of, they just want to have those women illiterate. And he can't play Scrabble with his wife, and he wants to be able to play that game. Okay? And so then they spell out words that she feels is kind of luxury, you know, to be able to play. And then it goes on. Finally, he tells me it's time for me to go home. Those are the words he uses, go home. He means to my room. He asks me if I will be all right, as if the stairway is dark and street. I say yes. We open his study door just a crack and listen for noises in the hall. This is like being on a date. This is sneaking into the dorm after hours. This is a conspiracy. Thank you, he says, for the game. Then he says, I want you to kiss me. Now, she gives him a little peck, and it's kind of strange, but it's really bizarre. But we learn also later on that he's done this with a previous handmaid, so he's not monogamous at all. And all the commanders have a secret club they go to where Moria works, and they all pass women around and have giant orgies. So they're hypocrites as well. But, I mean, what do you expect from, you know, I don't know. Oh, look, this guy is not monogamous to his wife, Serena Joy. Oh, wow, we haven't heard that 1,000 times. You know, look, a man cheated. Look, a man craves another woman. You don't say, oh, does a chicken have feathers? You know, it's really absurd. The author also is like, she kisses him, right? And she can smell his shaving lotion. You know, she's really good with putting scents in there. And she just kind of makes it casual and meek. But you can see how the shaitan gets in, you know. I remember our main character, she's 33 years old, and her name is Offred. Now we're in part 24. I go back along the dimmed hall and up the muffled stairs, stealthily to my room. There, I sit in the chair, with the lights off, in my red dress, hooked and buttoned. You can think clearly only with your clothes on. What I need is perspective, the illusion of depth, created by a frame, the arrangement of shapes on a flat surface. Perspective is necessary. Otherwise, there are only two dimensions. Otherwise, you live with your face squashed against the wall. Everything huge, foreground of details. Close-up hairs, the weave of the bedsheet. So it says she goes into these little detailed tirades, I'd argue. Now, she's good with wordiness. I'll give her that. The molecules of the face. Your own skin like a map. A diagram of futility. Like she goes in, right? She goes and shows us the capacity of the character to do deep introspection. And this is usually something that can happen when you've got time on your hands. Okay? Because the handmaids, they got a lot of time, and this is how they spend some of that time. Okay? They don't get to read or draw or paint or garden. The wives get to garden, if they would so choose. But they can also have others maintain their garden. But their hobby now is internal rather than external. Okay. She has brown hair as well. And she says, I have trouble remembering what I used to look like. I have viable ovaries. I have one more chance. So here how she really frames fertility in this negative light. Now, I'm sure we tell women often, when you get into your 30s, you know the clock's ticking, but feminists hate to hear that. They'd rather you get ran through in your 20s, get 2 or 3 abortions, risk catching an STD before you decide to marry a man And that poor bastard who marries you is going to suffer with your mental baggage. You know, if you say, get married at 20, they're like, how dare you? You should get married at 40. You should get married at 35. So, when she says, like, I have viable ovaries, she's reducing it down. I am a vessel. I am a womb on 2 legs. Like, she wants to reduce it down to being valuable only because you can have pregnancies. But this is what feminists do. They want women to be valuable for something more than bringing children into this world. And they don't think bringing children into the world is something remarkable or special. This is why they get abortions. They call it a clump of cells. They don't say they've terminated a soul's capacity to enter this realm. They don't see pregnancy as anything special or unique about women. You know, they aren't appreciative at all. At all. And that's why I think this Islam and even Christianity, we have a better view of that children are special. Pregnancy is a miraculous process. Feeling your baby move, you know, struggling to give birth and then nursing your baby with your own breast. These are just a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though it's difficult. But they don't really see it that way. They'd rather be sterile, like Moria, getting swapped by every guy, you know, perpetually passed around like a blunt at a party. You know, they have a very sick, twisted thought process. They want to be men, being able to be like rabbits, humpity humpity. They don't want to be a kept woman who's valued for her beauty and fertility, you know. I think this also stems just from the past of when monarchies wanted to have heirs to thrones, where a woman, when she was married, she was expected to bring children into the royal family. And so, you know, it's a tough thing, because there's people who can't have kids, and I think that, you know, Islam is brilliant because those women can be concubines, and those women can be a second, third, or fourth wife. But there's nothing wrong with a man wanting to pick a fertile woman so he can have the joy of children, the blessing of children. Monogamy means that if a man picks an infertile woman, or a woman an infertile man, that's the end of the bloodline. And for people who hate children, they see that as great. But if you want children, that's painful. I mean, if you just look at how some of these women cry during their IVF treatments, they waited too long to have kids, and then you see them on Instagram crying, how they keep trying, how hard it is. You're like, it's weird. And then you'll see a reel that talks about, oh, I had a miscarriage and I'm happy because I was gonna get ready to have an abortion. And you're like, you guys are animals. Worse than animals. So you just see the dynamicism of it all, where these witchy women degrade motherhood, degrade children, degrade fertility, and use reductive language in order to make you feel disgust at your own fertility. It's very clever and sinister. But something has changed now. Tonight, circumstances have altered. I can ask for something, possibly not much, but something. Men are sex machines, said Aunt Lydia, and not much more. They only want one thing. You must learn to manipulate them for your own good. Lead them around by the nose, that's the metaphor. So see how the feminist men are pigs. So she's mad that men are sex machines, but she likes Moria, who makes herself a sex machine. See the feminist hypocrisy? It's okay when women do it, but it's not okay when men do it. See that? That's why I hate feminists. Moria chose to be the passed around brothel woman, to be sterilized so she can't have kids. So look at this. Men are bad for being sex machines. Women shouldn't be baby machines. What do you want? And then when men only want women for sex and not children, they say, what do you think I am? Just an object? You're objectifying me? You can't win with a feminist. They're never happy. They're never happy. If you want them for intimacy, what do you think I am, you know? Your human fleshlight? Okay. You know, I want you to cook and clean and talk to me. I'm not your therapist. I'm not your maid. I'm not your chef. Okay. I want to have children with you. I'm not your baby machine. I'm not your brood mare. And you're like, well, what are you? What are you? Feminists don't even know what they are. They're a deep cult that hate men but worship them at the same time. Oh, we don't hate men. Meanwhile, they talk about men every day. Men are this, men are that, men are this, men are that. And then if you're like, hey, you should have some nuance about men. How? Shut up, pick me, shut up, block. It's wild. So when you read feminist books, you see the language similarities, the language patterns. Okay, that's what we're doing here. Said Aunt Lydia, and not much more. I mean, intimacy is important. See, a feminist will say men are sex machines, but if you tell a feminist she should have relations with her husband more often, and if you don't, he might cheat on you, or he might watch adult content, they say, well, then he's not relationship material. Just the other day, I saw a post by a feminist. Oh, she's like, oh, I'm so tired, I'm feeling touched out. And she had her, like, she looked so sloppy in her reel. And then at the end, it said, but my husband's like this, and it had a kangaroo laying down, like exposing his you-know-what. And then it's like, okay, so you look ugly, you're out of shape, you probably stink, you're not beautiful, but your husband still wants you, and you're mad at that? And it's funny because those same women will be like, yeah, he bothers me for intimacy, and then when he doesn't go to her anymore, instead he goes and finds another woman, or he watches adult content, or he thirst traps. I mean, he looks at thirst traps on Instagram. They cry. They can't make up their mind. They're so broken women. So they get mad when he pursues and touches. Remember, there was another reel where the woman demanded her husband ask for consent every time he tries to touch her. Can you imagine the amount of punking these people do to their men? So the absolute state of men picking feminists, it's like you have a death wish. You don't love yourself as a man if you pick a feminist. You're literally setting yourself up to marry a demon. Okay? It's not a joke. I'm not being hyperbolic. I really believe that. Studying them for so long, you're like, these women make no sense. So, they don't want to cook. The women don't want to cook. They don't want to clean. They don't want to have your kids. So what's left is intimacy. And then they say they're not in the mood. And if you bother them, that's coercion and you're oppressive and they're not your slave. And then when you tell them you have needs, they say you're selfish and you're not thinking about her, and they find a way to blame the man. I mean, it's absolutely stunning how a man can do nothing right in the relationship. It's always about her mood swings, her inability to control her mood swings, her fluctuating, chaotic, sporadic, emotional whirlwinds, her tsunami of hormone rage. You know, you can't win. Okay? It's wild. It's absolutely crazy. So it's not, when I say men have testosterone, they're not monogamous by nature, they're polygamous by nature. People will disagree. But feminists are like, they're sex machines. What does that mean? It means that they have that internal craving due to their healthy testosterone. This is also shaming heterosexuality, but at the same time, even with the gay men, they are very promiscuous. Monogamy is not the norm amongst gay men. And if you study them and you see how they talk, they like to be a little bit, they don't have monogamy as much as that. But once they were able to get civil marriages, that started to change a little bit. They're like, where's this relationship going? But before, when they couldn't get married, they were literally just having a lot of fun. There's a lot of conversations about this. James Sexton, the divorce lawyer, also pointed this out, how the relationship dynamics of his gay clientele changed once marriage was allowed. Before that, it was more promiscuity, nightlife. Not to stereotype, it's just that they have each group has their own different cultures. Like if you look at, a culture in France, where women at one point in time they're the most famous whores in the world. Even John Adams had a letter to his wife about how the lewdness and looseness of the French women, and how he didn't want that behavior in America. And then you just look at throughout the ages, in the 60s and 70s, how women behaved compared to the 20s and 50s. You know, you can get a little bit of a example of what is normal to different pockets and different, you know, groupings of people. And so, whether the man is heterosexual or homosexual, they still have that testosterone that desires to have relations. So, here though, she's just shaming heterosexual desires, you see? Another way that lesbians shame heterosexuality. But how to fit the commander into this, as he exists in his study, with his word games and his desire for what? To be played with, to be gently kissed, as if I meant it. I know I need to take it seriously, the desire of his. It could be important, it could be a passport. It could be my downfall. Now see what this means about that passport. To a better life. She could, hoping that, you know, she could manipulate him to help her escape. Or downfall, as in, he ends up, for any reason, becoming displeased with her or getting caught, that she can be sent to the colonies, you see? So, you can feel the anxiety in the main character's predicament. You get caught by the wife, downfall. You don't please the commander well enough, downfall. So she doesn't have a lot of agency. She's stuck in a weird position. But she could also go to the aunts and let them know. So there's a lot of shenanigans going on, and it just highlights the actual corruption. The commanders are supposed to obey the rules. They're the leader of the family, but they're not following the rules. You see, so it's a problem. She does good on pointing out how men can't stick to those religious codes very well. But he's not the only corrupt commander in Gilead. But if the male leaders of the patriarchal society in Gilead can't keep to their own rules that they make, that's a problem. Definitely a problem, you know? But it also just goes to show that human folly, human sin, human struggles, right? But there's less mercy for the commander, and all the mercy is moved towards our main character, right? Let me know what you think. It's a pretty intense book. It's important for us as Muslim women to dissect it. And by going through it, when a feminist mentions it to me now, because, alhamdulillah, I'm so well versed in it, I can kind of go at it. And this has happened before. I'll talk about the book. The person has only watched the series, hasn't read the books, and then they kind of see how their example doesn't make sense as much as they thought it does, and then they just block me. But with books that become a cultural phenomenon for a certain time period, it's important for us to examine it so that when a youth comes to us and asks us a question or something, we have a response. And if we are to combat liberalism and crush feminism, it's important for us as believers to wrestle with these texts. And I still think about me writing a dystopian type of book, but where a believer is oppressed in the feminist matriarchal society. I think that would really piss them off. But I don't have the time now. Maybe in the future, but inshallah. Because I am a good writer, and I'm very thrifty and swift with the English language. So, inshallah, alhamdulillah, I could do something similar. But, alas, for now, we have this book to wrestle with. And don't forget, I've also read the second one, the Testaments. Okay? And inshallah, when we're finished with this one, we'll go on to that one as well. Okay? And please like, comment, subscribe, join the blog. I do a lot of refutations on the blog. And I put a lot of educational stuff on culinary arts and vocabulary and whatnot. and motherhood stuff. So it's really worth the $5. You can always subscribe for more if you want, $10 a month. But it really helps out. And I produce quite a lot of content on my 2 channels, Instagram, and on the blog. So you always have something to look at. And support what you love, you know, to keep it around. And I don't have ads, I'm not monetized, and I don't have sponsors. Even though I do help to have some Quran printings for dawah purposes. Take care, until next time.